Welcome to the Collector Chatter podcast. This is episode 27. And in this episode, this is going to be our Star Wars episode. So again, I am Miguel with my co-host Charlie. And like we have done in the past, we like to have a episode centered around like a certain line. And what better line than to do this time Star Wars? We have been getting people telling us that we need to do this episode. We already knew we wanted to do it, but we were kind of waiting for a little while. But, you know, with a lot of announcements and things that were around Star Wars and you know, in general with shows coming out and Funko dropping more stuff, we figured, you know what, let's do it now. This will be a great time to just talk about all things collectibles, Funko related, that kind of stuff with Star Wars. And we will have mostly Charlie kind of leading the way on this one. Obviously, he's our resident Star Wars nerd, I guess you could say.
Yes,
and then we'll have him kind of bring it up. But we do have I do got my Grogu shirt. I know you have your hat and your Moff Gideon shirt. So pretty cool. So let's get into this episode. So again, this episode is going to be strictly just about Star Wars. We're just going to kind of we've been splitting up the episodes, and this is going to be right into the Star Wars.
Right into it.
Yeah.
So yes. So I mean, the Star Wars line for me is what got me into Funko Pops, as everyone has heard me say, and it's one of the OG lines. It started in 2011, and we got all the great original characters. The first one ever made was Vader. We then got Yoda, Han Solo, Princess Leia, Stormtroopers, Luke, like all those OG ones. And what's really interesting about the Star Wars line is the boxes have changed throughout its lifetime. So the originals, like that everyone wants, if you're like a hardcore Star Wars collector, is like the blue box with the Star Wars in white. And they've now reproduced some of those pops. Like, for example, the Chewbacca one, you can go right now and buy it on Funko.com. And it's like one of the vaulted ones, and they changed it to the black box. So it's no longer blue and it's black and says Star Wars in white. But then even in between, they've had blue boxes with Star Wars in yellow. Like, it's really nuts, this line. And when we're talking about the boxes in general, which is even more crazy, is the line became super mainstream and popular when Star Wars came back with like The Force Awakens, when Disney made it. And that's when they really started pumping out a lot of pops, and we would get them for all the movies, as we do with anything. But then when the Mandalorian came out, one thing which I'm not sure if you know this, we may have talked about in the past, but the original line of the Mandalorian pop said the Mandalorian. It no longer does. It now says Star Wars, which is super interesting to me. Like, I don't know why they started doing that. The only thing I can think of is like they knew like the Book of Boba Fett was coming out and like Ahsoka's coming out, and they're all going to be like aligned, and they no longer wanted to do it. But I just find that super strange. And even like Star Wars Rebels, which is a popular cartoon, that says, I have some in the background, if you can see, like that's a Star Wars Rebels on
it says Rebels.
But like the Clone Wars pops just say Star Wars. So like we've talked about this in the past, but that's the one thing about Star Wars that I think separates it from all the other lines is the boxes are super confusing because they're all different.
And I think what's weird is, like, let me know what you think. So like you said, the OG ones, everyone knows are the blue box. I know that that run was like the first 50, I think, or 57. So from 1 to 57, they all came out in a blue box. And then, like you said, they repurposed them and redid them again in like a different version of the blue box and the black box. So like it was weird that they did that. But like Charlie said, right now, well, very recently, Funko had a huge restock. And it was a lot of Disney style stuff. So it was Disney, some Marvel, and some Star Wars that went up. And it was a lot of the OG pops, but they're clearly redone. And if you guys don't know, when pops come out, they're all dated. So sometimes when they restock or they reproduce whatever it is, they'll do the same exact pop in the box or whatever, and then the date on the bottom will be different. So you can have the same box even and everything, but your date will be that it was actually released 3 years later, for instance, right? But what I think is weird, specifically with the Star Wars ones, because they are the OG, like they came out to 2011, like you said, is that the mold of the actual figure is still the old, like, more plain looking one, which is weird, because does that mean that they're like making them and making them look like the old ones, or do they just have these molds laying around,
Dude,
and then
I've
they just
thought
put
of
them in a
that.
new box.
I I think there must be this thing going on now where Funkos has hit a certain point where they feel like they already have like a nostalgic factor and people want the old look. Like people in the
And you think
beginning,
they're
I think
reproducing it
I think they're
made like that?
reproduced. They have to be. They must
So
just for
weird.
certain ones because why there's no way they just found that Chewbacca one laying around in the Yoda. I think Chewbacca and Yoda were on there.
Yeah, Chewbacca
Like,
and Yoda. Yeah.
pardon me, I have both of them like in the blue boxes, so I didn't need to jump on them. But like if I didn't, for someone who just like likes collecting Star Wars pops, I probably would
Yeah.
have bought them. But you're right. Then at the end of the day, it's like not the OG one. It's just yeah, it's really strange.
It's weird. And I mean, they don't only do it with Star Wars because, like, I know specifically as a horror fan, they've done it a lot with horror, like the Freddy Krueger, like actual
Yep.
OG. I think that's number 2 in the line or number 3 in the movie line. That thing has been redone so many times, but it's still the old looking clunky actual pop of the Freddy. And I'm like, it says 2019, and I'm like, this isn't from that. So like, why do they keep doing that? So it's the same thing with that. Yeah, because the Chewbacca one specifically, like you could just tell there's not much detail because it was really one
Yeah,
of
the
the
old
old
line.
ones.
And then the other
So
thing which we've talked about in the past that sticks, Star Wars apart from everything is they come with the stands, which
yeah,
I love that because I just like the way it looks. Weirdly enough, like I said, they're the first pops I really got. My first one ever was a Disney pop, which was Zurg, which weirdly enough had a stand. Some of the original ones had stands on them. I just
yeah.
like thought in the beginning, like Funkos have stands. So when I started like getting other lines and I was like, oh wow, they don't. I thought it was weird. Like I like the stand. And if you are an out of box collector, you can take them like right off if you wanted and not have the stand. It's not like they're
Oh,
glued
did
on.
they come? I've never taken a Star Wars pop out of the box.
They're not glued on.
Oh wow, see,
They're
that's
def
so weird. That's one of the only pops I've never taken out to see how it is
okay.
with a
It's
stand.
identical to like when you have like the clear stand on a pop, how they pop
Oh,
right
like
out.
where there's a hole
Yep.
in the foot and they just.
They're clearly
Oh
there,
wow,
like
I
how
thought they
we've
were connected to it.
yeah, no, they're clearly there, like we've talked in the past, like for legal reasons. But
Yeah.
I I think it adds to it. I don't know if you agree or not. Like I like it.
Yeah, I agree. So like when I remember, collecting, and Star Wars pops weren't the first ones I grabbed, but I do remember seeing them and seeing like the stands, and I always thought it was kind of cool. I didn't know initially that it was every single one. I thought maybe like a certain movie or a wave or whatever they had that. And then I started to realize I was like, no, they all have that. And they all, if I'm not mistaken, they only have the little plaque that says Star Wars, right? It doesn't matter where they're from, what movie, whatever. It just says Star Wars. Is that how they are?
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. So they all have the little Star Wars. And we brought this up. The main time we brought it up was during our Marvel episode because they're very similar in the sense that both of them are also the only figures that are bobbleheads. So not
Yes.
only do Star Wars have stands, they also have bobbleheads, which we know Marvel does as well. And we don't know this for sure, but it seems like the most concrete answer that we've gotten on the web and from people is that it has to do with a licensing issue, and it has to do kind of with Hasbro being like one of the main action figure toy companies. So in order for Funko to kind of essentially get away with making their own action figure or figure, they made them a bobblehead, and even the boxes don't say final figure like every other Funko does. It just says bobblehead. So I always thought that was like an interesting thing that there were the two big ones that did that, but Star Wars is the only one that has the actual, stands. And it's cool. Yeah, it doesn't matter. Like even if it's a moment or something big, the platform will still have that stand, right? It's still no matter what.
It says
They
Star like
make sure it has it.
yeah, like some of the movie moments it doesn't. It's on that
Okay.
stand, but like it still then says Star Wars on the bottom of it.
Yeah, it still has something that
Yeah,
says it.
it still has something. But I like I said, I think it adds a lot to it. And then that also helps with the bobble. If you are an out of box collector, they it helps, make it not top heavy, which I always
Hmm.
liked. Where the Marvel ones, like part of me feels like some of the Marvel ones should have stands. I don't know. It just to me it adds to a
Yeah.
premium of the way the pop looks.
Well, there's even there's some pops that won't stand if you take them out of the box.
Yeah,
And I know
impossible.
most of the time the little plastic clear stands that you get, majority of the time, and there's obviously a reason, they're usually in like girl pops or female pops because they'll have heels or they'll have really
Yes.
small, thin
And
legs
those
and they
don't
don't
even
stand
work.
right. Yeah, and sometimes they don't work, but they're the ones that usually come with one because for the most part, majority of the, especially the OG
Yep.
pops, they have pretty clunky feet on the pop, so they'll stand. But I hate the fact that not all of them do. And like obviously I have a lot of out of box ones. Like the fact, like this is why it's funny that all my Star Wars pops that I have, Star Wars, Mandalorian, any of those, I've never taken out of box. They're the only ones I literally have never taken out of box. And I've never noticed that stand. I've
Goes
always thought
off.
they were connected to the stand because of
Yeah.
the whole they have to be on a stand thing. I didn't realize you can take them off and just put the pop down without it, which is kind
Yep.
of funny because then you're kind of going against what they're
Supposed to
selling
do.
it as, right? Yeah. So it's interesting. But yeah, that's always been a cool thing where they have the stands. And I also like that majority of them are black, but they've now been kind of incorporating like different colors. Like I know the
Yes.
Grogu one was super cool because he was on like rock and the color of the stand changed because it was the same, it blended
Yep.
in
They
to
had
make it
made
look more like,
They did. And the Qui-Gon Jinn one they recently made an Amazon exclusive, like it was him in Tatooine and it's sand. So they made it like match the color, which
yeah, like a
I
sand
really like.
color.
Like that makes it even better in my opinion of the stand. Before I didn't mind that it legitimately looks like it's on a stand, but now it looks more like it's part of the collectible, like
Mhm.
it fits the scene. And I feel like they're not going to do that for everything going forward, but they will for special ones for certain like reasons to just elevate the look of the pop, which I really like.
Yeah, I think, and like, because if I'm not wrong, most of them are black, right? Pretty much the
They're
majority,
all like black
pretty much all
until
black
very recently.
till those new ones, right? Because
And
then I
there's
was
like
gonna say like when they came out with the concept series, right? Like the Boba Fett concept series, is that one white or is it still on a black?
it's on black.
Okay, see, I feel like that would have been cool to make that white.
They legitimately didn't change the colors until this past year for
Or
an
these new
Amazon, like,
couple
yeah,
ones.
across the galaxy. They did this, every month they were coming out with a new pop, and they're the only ones that have had different color stands.
Yeah, so that's cool. So at least they're kind of changing that up. But even yeah, even them being black is still, it was always like a cool thing. And I do like that it helps with if you're not a box collector, you prefer, you'll have a better way of actually putting them up and not have to worry
Yeah.
about like, having an issue. Like I specifically always think of one Marvel pop that I had an issue, and that's the Vision. So the Vision pop where he's kind of leaning forward and
Yeah,
his
it does
cape
not. Yep.
does not stand whatsoever. And I lost that box. That was one of these original ones that I have here. And I never could put him to stand. He never could stand. I never could stand him even in this thing. He would always fall
Yeah.
over. So like, yeah, that pop, I think my daughter now has it. And it's like $100 pop, I think. But which is
And it's
funny.
just funny too with the stands. Like, I love how they've incorporated the color, but they'll probably mass producing reasons is why they probably won't do that going forward for every pop because it just
Yeah.
makes it much more difficult.
Well, also knowing that they're literally stands that come out and connect to them makes sense that they're all
Even
universal black.
yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
would that make sense? Because if they were built into the mold, I guess they can get away with having to, change it up if they wanted to.
Yeah.
But yeah, that makes sense
Which,
if
while we're talking about
if
the
that.
stands, I don't know if you guys listen to our last episode, but Funko Sodas have finally been announced, and that's another product that we've been waiting for forever. And they're on stands too, so they totally
Yep.
kept that going, as well as the bobble. We think so. It'll be interesting to see if those stands will always look exactly the same, or if they'll kind of change those up. I kind of wish they'll change them up, but I'm sure. Do they look like they're clear? Is that what the color? Did you see like taking the picture? Or were they
Uh
black?
they weren't black.
Yeah, I don't
I
think
have
they
to look
were.
back at them, but I don't know if they were clear. I think they were just like I think like Luke's was the color of, I don't know. I definitely have to look back because I know when we saw them, we were pretty excited. I'm trying to pull it up now quick. I'm not getting where it
Yeah,
is.
they're clear.
So they're actually
They're like a
clear.
clear
Oh, they're
white.
like oh, okay. Yeah, one, well, the Boba looks white and the Luke one looks clear,
You're right. So
right?
is that just the way that the image is made, or will they be different? Is the
Yeah,
question.
because another thing, these aren't the real, these are just like glam shots. So I guess it depends. Maybe each one will be a little different depending on how like how the figure is. But like we talked about it in the last episode, like I said, I wonder if these, because they're sodas, that they're gonna fit as like a topper on top of the can, where it'll actually, stand up there, or if it's gonna stand in the front. But that's a cool thing too, because the fact that they're doing that, that's another type of figure that pisses me off, that not all of them stand
Stand.
perfectly.
I
And
agree.
it's the sodas, and the sodas I always display out like this, and I have them on like a small topper that I get from Ezra's Flipkates Designs. And then we put the pog in the front, but not all of them stand. Like a couple of these, like I have an Edward over here, he's leaning on the can. And then I have some that lean forward, like the Rocketeer does not stand. So he's leaning forward onto the pog.
Okay.
And like certain ones, based off of their weight or how they're made, don't, majority of them stand, but not all of them do. So them having a stand, I think, is going to be like another cooler way of displaying. But that also now, like the pog aspect, like this may not look as good because that little Star Wars thing's in the front.
It'll be
Like,
blocked.
do I put the pog to the side? Like, that's going to be something as a person who displays them out. I mean, if you guys are going to be getting them, like, what do you guys think like would be a good way to display them with the pog? Because that's going to be interesting to see them. But I mean, I'm excited that Star Wars is finally doing sodas.
Yeah, because they legitimately, every product Funko has ever made has had Star Wars, like all the main ones. So sodas have really taken so long. So I'm happy they're finally here, and I'm sure they will, overdo it at the wazoo, because there's been none.
Sure.
It's like a catch-up game, which I don't care, but I feel like we're gonna get.
Yeah, they're starting at 1, so that at that point they can literally make everyone if they want, or regardless of how many they make, none have been made. So like anybody they come out with, they can do. Now, what I don't want them to do is start making duplicates. And I know when we talked about it, we were a little surprised that the combination of the first two that are coming out are Boba and Luke, which we both agreed that Darth Vader should have definitely been one of the first ones released. But the Luke one, like you said, there's obviously multiple versions of Luke that they can kind of use or go to. And I don't want them to go back to a Luke before we get a Chewbacca and a Yoda and like more of the main ones and a Stormtrooper. Like we need those core ones. And hopefully if they do that, they can still do this because it's the beginning of the wave. Hopefully it becomes like a better line overall because they do that, versus kind of like what they did with Marvel. They kind of started right, and now they've already made like 3 different Captain Americas, and before doing some other characters, right? There's already a second Spider-Man. It's weird.
Crazy. I'm gonna be really interested how the Star Wars soda line plays out, because as someone who's a hardcore OG fan, and in our last episode, I did say I was surprised that we both said Vader wasn't the original, the first one, but I'm a little surprised they didn't go off with the Mandalorian. Like I know that people obviously want the main OG characters, but from what I've read, that's the biggest line right now for Funko, which I was surprised that like that line in general, not Star Wars as a whole, but the Mandalorian one is one of their most top selling ones. So, and it's,
I mean, to me, it makes sense. And I'm only going to say that because that's what really got me into collecting Star Wars Funko.
Yeah.
And I think that what that means is that if you're a Star Wars fan, you're going to love Star Wars across the board and you're going to love Mandalorian, right?
Yep.
But you're also going to get people that only like Mandalorian and don't really know too much about the original Star Wars series, right? And then maybe some that kind of do, but got introduced, like I said, more my side by the Mandalorian. And I think that's going to make Mandalorian automatically have that extra group of fans and people. So like, yeah, I totally agree that Mandalorian could have totally been like, it could have been Mandalorian and Boba. They're the two hot people right now, right? Like when it comes
like they
to
could have done. It is interesting. We've talked in episodes before, like they don't go back to certain movies or TV shows, like they kind of are in the now, but like they completely did the opposite for this, because you're right, even the Boba Fett mold is the first 2 sodas are essentially from Empire Strikes Back, which is the most popular Star Wars movie of all time, probably. But why not have made the Boba mold for what's happening right now in the Mandoverse? Like it is just interesting to me. This makes me feel like we'll talking about repeating characters, we'll get that Boba Fett. And one will probably
might be another one that's gonna
No
But
mask.
that also kind of throws off like, do they just continue with OG Star Wars and then go to Mandalorian? But Mandalorian is so popular, so it's probably going to be one of the next ones,
Yeah, because there's
which
got to
means
be
that
a
they're going to be
Grogu
kind of going
soda.
back and forth. Yeah, so they're going to kind of be going back and forth. They're going to probably do some of the new shows, and then they're going to
Yep.
go back to some of the old movies. And it's like, it's weird, like their idea of like what makes sense. And I guess, whatever they think will sell, regardless, I think it being Star Wars and finally being in soda form, I think is going to either one, get soda collectors who are fans getting them, even if maybe they're not as big of a fan, just because they like sodas, they will. But then it's also going to get some people who maybe are just so hardcore Star Wars that regardless if it is a soda, they're going to collect it. Because I know Star Wars is one of those fandoms that even if it's a mystery mini, even like, it could be anything.
Yeah.
And if it's got Star Wars on it or it's a character, someone's going to collect it if they're like a big fan.
I mean, if you didn't get me into sodas already, that I would have definitely bought these, like the Star Wars
This
ones.
would have been your first ones that you
They would have been my first ones. I was like, I have to get them because I have bought in the mystery minis. I've bought in the Dorbs. I've bought in the Pop Key. Like, I think I have a product of everything they've ever made in Star Wars. So the sodas, it definitely would have been it. Like, I mean, that's the other thing. Like I said, they've legitimately made everything. I mean, the first ever Funko balloon in the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade was Star Wars. It was Grogu, Baby Yoda. So they, of course, then not many lines have ever had like a special, then like commemorative Funko Pop that was just for the parade. They went a little overboard with that, with sweatshirts, t-shirts, keychains, like different pops, but it's still like shows the testament of how huge Star Wars is. And like, I mean, Star Wars has always been about toys as well. Like that was what kept the brand alive from when it was first came out in the 70s until today being a staple. George Lucas was all about like toys, news. That's where the money was.
That's where his money was. Yep.
Obviously we're talking about Funkos, but like Star Wars have been staples in toys from when, they made the original Kenner action figures, which now, they make the Black series. They still, they make 6-inch figures. They make the 3.75-inch figures. I mean, they make lightsabers. They make helmets. I mean, Star Wars collectibles is unlike anything, even in my opinion, Marvel. Like, I don't think anything touches Star Wars collectibles. I'm not just saying that as a bias because it is my favorite fandom. There's just a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think what happens, like you threw out Marvel, for instance, right? Which obviously it's a big one, but I think Marvel has its hand in a couple things where it's like it may be toys and collectibles, or it might be the comics and the actual books. Whereas Star Wars, like it really is toys and collectibles. Like that's where they just blew up with like they've had figures forever. Like you said, I remember specifically seeing the show Pawn Stars, and one of the guys on there had like one of the biggest Star Wars collections, like a full garage of insane amount of figures and toys and stuff, all in boxes and action figures and stuff. And it was like crazy to think that many came out. And I think what happens is so many different movies. In each movie, there's so many characters. And with Star Wars, they have never shied away from making a side character who maybe just showed up one time
to make
like a toy. Like they do that. They don't care. And like it's always been, beloved by people who love Star Wars. Either way, you're gonna still collect it. You're not gonna complain like what we do sometimes with Funko. We're like, why are they making all these random side characters? Like when it comes to Star Wars, it's like they need to make every single one. That little random alien looking guy over there, he needs to be in a figure. So I think with Funko, it's definitely one of their more popular lines. I'm sure it's not necessarily one of their biggest lines though, which I think is interesting when it comes to just pops. Because when I was looking, I think they just recently got into the 500s, which we also spoke about Marvel being over 1,000.
The thing with Star Wars, which is kind of interesting, like I was getting in earlier, was like, when Funko first, was, came out and was making pops when they were making the pop line. I mean, there's even bobblers, wacky wobblers of Star Wars, but they kind of made a line and kind of like moved on, like because Star Wars wasn't really in mainstream anymore because there wasn't anything. Like it's hard to think about this now, but the last like episode 3 came out in like 2005, and then Star Wars was nothing came out until Disney bought it.
Yeah.
and they now have obviously turned Star Wars into the juggernaut of like Marvel of just, pumping out like content and movies. Like we were getting a Star Wars movie basically every year at one point. It was, we got the episodic one, and then we got the spin-off one, like was Rogue One. Then we got,
Yeah.
episode 7, and then it just,
And you got
episode 8, then we got
Solo and
Solo, then we got episode 9. And it was not until recently they kind of slowed down because there's a lot, some people love the sequel, some people hate them, kind of made the fandom really divisive. And Mandalorian really came and was kind of, it's basically universally beloved by everyone. Now they're
yeah.
really going on with the Disney Plus shows. But what I'm getting at with this is they didn't have until episode 7 came out starting pumping out Funko Pops. So then when all those movies came out, that's when they were making all of them like they do for all the MCU movies.
Yeah. Because
That's why they're kind of playing catch up.
I found that interesting too, because when I was looking through the list and before we did this, I just wanted to kind of see like, what were the first few that came out. And that's why I was saying the 157 is known as like the OG ones.
Yep.
And that's the blue box. They redid them in black, but that's the OG movies. And then, like you said, after that is when you get all the, the third set of movies that came out. From then on is all those characters, right? And then maybe they revisited some or whatever they did. But I do think that it's now, it's not that it never went away or it wasn't like cool or whatever, but I think now Disney Plus and them making shows has brought a whole new crowd into that universe.
Yep.
Where
it totally has.
Where you had, I'm sure, you had a stereotype as to like who was the OG Star Wars fans for the most part, right? And now I feel like that is bigger. Like it's a more vast, different type of group of people now because of the shows, if I'm not mistaken, right?
No, I agree.
Mandalorian for
Mandalorian
sure,
made it extremely mainstream. Not that Star Wars wasn't huge, but yeah, it had hardcore fans. But the events were like, the movies were events. Like think about it. Like the original movies, there were 6 movies. Then we obviously got 7, 8, and 9. Like I said, the spinoffs, but like that was it. We have like way more Marvel movies than that in a couple years. And after they came out, the originals in the 70s and the 80s, the next one didn't come back until 1999. So it was like, oh my God, Star Wars back. I mean, I remember like I was young, and that's when I was really into Star Wars. Like that's another thing. Like I like the prequels. I'm of the prequel generation where OG fans, like they don't really like them.
Yeah.
Even like it's kind of upsetting because like I'm a huge Star Wars nerd and I read everything. Like J.J. Abrams has been very upfront and being like, I hate the prequels. So when he made the sequels, he made it like, I'm making this feel more like the OG, which is why it's a little disjointed, the storytelling. And like, there's even jabs, like there's some lines like, that he's kind of making jabs at the prequels, which I don't like as like a hardcore fan. Like don't like spit all over George Lucas, in my opinion, where filmmakers like him, like the Steven Spielbergs and the George Lucases of the world are like who they looked up to. So it's just kind of interesting.
Yeah, you should have been paying him like more homage.
Exactly. And where I'm getting at with that too is like, I think even Funko is kind of like, we don't really need to make like prequel merch. It isn't until now that like people are loving the prequels again. The Clone Wars cartoon made people love the prequels, like, or like appreciate them more. And now with like Obi-Wan Kenobi series coming out, which I think is going to be the greatest show that Disney Plus has put out, in my opinion. It looks like it's even going to be that first trailer. The quality looks like it's a blockbuster film. Not that any of the other shows aren't. And that's really going to make people want prequel Funko Pops more. There's not many of them. I know people have complained about that before. They even in comments have been like, oh, they need to make these pops. Like there's not a lot
from the prequel ones, right? Yeah, there's not too many.
Correct.
From, like,
there's not. There's like there's there's not a lot of them. And most of them came in either the Smuggler's Bounty boxes, or they made, which clearly they knew like this is a hardcore Star Wars fan probably. Walgreens had a few exclusives. There was like some con exclusives, but there hasn't been many of them. So that's another reason why I feel like the line isn't as big. And now they're making them.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think I think it's in a good place now though, because of you still have the original fans that are always still around, but now you're getting some more. And I do like what they're doing with the shows. I think the shows at starting with the Mandalorian were just filmed so well. Like they look ridiculous. Like I know there was a specific like what is it like some technology, whatever it was that he did that John
John
Favreau
Favreau made
used
like
for Mandalorian.
it's all filmed in like a dome.
Yeah, it's like the way he filmed it, it was done so that's why it looks so like the HD. I don't know, it's just crazy how
It's like
nice
I mean, because I'm like nerd with this stuff. I mean, it's legitimately built on like a video game engine. So
essentially, yeah,
where they're legitimately in a 360 set that's all like huge TV screens. And when like the actors like moving, it's like moving with you, like you're actually there. It's like revolution. I mean, in my opinion, which is amazing to me because that's what George Lucas did. So now for John Favreau and like Dave Filoni to do that with, you know, all this new stuff, it's what Star Wars is all about. It's not just about the storytelling, it's also about the technology, which is another reason why some people didn't really love the prequels. Like that was George like really testing. Like Jar Jar Binks is like one of the first ever like CGI characters. Like that had never been done before. It's like hard. It's crazy to think about that now, but it's
because the original 3, everything was like costume puppet style stuff, right? It wasn't done with CGI and stuff like that. So
which had always been like this criticism where it's like the prequels looked newer, obviously, than
they came out after.
They came out after, and they were using all, you know, this state-of-the-art technology.
Yeah, which is interesting. Which I guess that's why it makes sense that even though the sequels and the shows are essentially kind of after or mixed in there, your mind still is like, well, it's newer, it just came out, so it's okay. Yes, so I could see why prequel would be like a weird thing to think of, and it being newer essentially is probably why, like, because it's not like obviously prequels come out after normal movies all the time.
Yeah,
but we're talking about the amount of years from the original Star Wars is such a big gap that it does kind of give us that little bit of like, well, those were really old in the 70s. Like their technology was completely different.
Yes, completely different.
But in Funko terms though, I mean, they've capitalized on it. They know how big Star Wars is, and I think like
they totally have.
I think they do a great job with the pops. I think they resemble the characters like really well. And I think if you're a fan of Star Wars, you're usually a fan of some type of collectible or some action figure or whatever it is. So Funko was smart in getting that license to, you know, make a lot of these products. But Sodas, I think, is going to be pretty sick because that's definitely one that I'm super excited about when it comes to like.
And it's even awesome, like them. Obviously we had mentioned in our last episode Star Wars Celebrations coming, but like even they've been now doing this for a few years, but they've even decided like we need to make that like a con, which I think is awesome in itself, that we get special Funko Pops for Star Wars Celebration, Star Wars Con on itself. I think that was really smart of Funko to do that. And they normally, as a Star Wars fan, those pops are pretty cool. They normally do make them feel special. Like they're not just, let's just make a random pop, which I don't necessarily think they do that all the time.
Well, I was gonna say, like, I feel like Star Wars Celebration is the only time they do that, right? Because like the DC,
they don't do the DC fandom. No,
they don't come out with special pops for that or like anything, and they should.
They don't.
That's like the perfect time to like, you know, like drop
even like when Disney has like D23, they'll make like a special pop for like the show, but you can't get that. Like I like that Funko allows you to get these if you don't go to the actual celebration. They've added that, just like they've shared exclusives, which I mean, even Marvel doesn't get that. Like like you said, DC doesn't get that. I think it's amazing that Star Wars does. And like I said, some of the most sought after pops, like the Thrawn one, for example, has come out of a Star Wars Celebration.
That's where it came from.
Cool.
Yeah. I was and I noticed for the most part, cons are pretty popular when it comes to like a pop that's like got a low piece count that ends up being a grail and ends up being super popular. SDCC among most is pretty much the biggest one. But But when I was looking at pops, because I kind of wanted just to see, because I know that there's some OG Star Wars pops that are ridiculously valued, right? And I just wanted to kind of get an idea. Do you know what the most expensive Star Wars pop is?
That's a con one.
Just in general, just the most expensive Star Wars pop. I mean, it is a con one, but
I think it's the Sith Trooper. That's pretty new. Is that it?
no,
Or no?
so that's top 5. That is, I wrote the top 5, so that's actually 5th. Yeah, so that one's,
is it a Freddy Funko?
That one's $1,750. That's it, and that one is pretty new, which is interesting that it is that expensive.
It's funny, not to get off of that topic because I want to continue that, but that pop has always been like, it's really interesting to me because they made it sound like when that pop came out that was gonna be like what's the word, like first look, which they did that with the D23 Mandalorian pop. So you can get that pop, it just doesn't have the sticker. They had said that was the way the Sith Trooper was going to be, and it wasn't. It ended up being exclusive. You can't even get like that was like one of the most marketed things of the Rise of Skywalker, and there's not even a common of that character, which blows my mind. I think that's why that pop is so sought after. Like you can't even get a common of it, which
like it's that limited. Yeah,
it's that limited. Like, which I thought was nuts. But yeah, I just wanted to bring that up that we're talking about that.
Yeah.
But is it a Freddy Funko?
No. So I'll run through the 5. So the 5th one's Sith Trooper.
Okay.
The 4th is a Shadow Trooper from SDCC. It's a 480 piece. And it's
okay. That's an old one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, it looks really old too. It's that's just under 2,000. Then there's a Funko Fundays Luke, which is pretty new, and it's gold. He's in all gold, and that's only an 80 piece, which is 2,520. So that was, I didn't know that was
an 80 piece pop.
80 piece. That's probably why, but it's crazy. And that was during a Fundays, which is random because now none of these Fundays ones are anywhere near that.
No.
The second most expensive one is Chewy Flocked. Okay. Which I remember seeing this one and knowing that was pretty. That's from 2011, so that's like a real OG flocked version, SDCC, 480 pieces as well, $2,660. And then the highest is 2012 SDCC, 480 piece hollow Darth Maul.
It's funny. That one I'm not surprised.
$6,480.
Wow.
You can literally get a car the price of this toy.
Yeah, it's funny. That's definitely a sought after one. I didn't realize it was the number one, but it makes sense.
Yeah. And again, those are back when SDCC, because 2011, 2012,
you could only get them there too.
They were only there, and they were always limited. And 480, for whatever reason, was always a number that they would, even some of the Freddies that are like super limited SDCCs are always like 480, or sometimes they're even more rare, but that was always like a weird number that would be the limited number. And yeah, I knew they had super expensive ones. I know there's also like other grails that are over 100. Like I know the Mandalorian New York Comic-Con one was,
but there's some pretty valued. I maybe not in the top 5, but there's a lot of Freddy Funko Star Wars that I think are worth a lot of money.
Yeah,
I'm curious if they're included in that list or not.
They're probably, if they're, I mean, 1,750 is a Sith Trooper, so they could be over $1,000 and still be, worth, which makes sense. Still be way up there. But yeah, it's just crazy because I figured a lot of these were pretty old or like very limited. But yeah, that Sith Trooper one, I know that's definitely a newer one, and I guess just because of how hard it was to get, it's just one that kept value. It kept its value.
That's where it's like that is a true exclusive. Like I know we get con exclusives, but the moment they become shared retailer, it's just not the same. Like you had to be at the show to get it. You had to wait in line, and that was even before. Like I've heard getting them at San Diego Con is super hard when they're exclusives like that.
Yeah, it makes sense that that's something would have a value like that because of the time and everything you have to go through.
It's just so funny that Luke Skywalker gold one. It's clearly because it's like a small piece count, but it's just so funny pops that get value. Like if someone gave me that pop, of course I'd want it, but like I could carry it. Like
it doesn't look that good.
Yeah,
it's not like the best looking one. Yeah,
the mall one I get, and like that I'm not surprised is number one. Like I should have guessed that. That is tons of people always want that, especially to complete their like glow set. And to me,
Yeah,
like
because of
I
that whole
actually
like
like
hollow
that
look.
one because he actually has been a hologram. Like they've made
Yeah,
characters that haven't been, that bothers me. So at
yeah, like
least like
Mandalorian.
he's been one. Well, no, he kind of was though. I take it as, like in the scene in when he's has the huge hologram, he's talking to Moff Gideon. Like you have
Yeah.
something like, to
So
me,
they
that's
actually
right,
show him as a
as a
hologram. You mean,
hologram.
yeah,
Like
I
to
get what you're
me,
saying.
that's
Yeah.
what people get confused with the like. I don't think they do a good job whenever they make like a Star Wars like glow in the dark one. It's kind of like, oh, like the Force Ghost one that I've talked about a
Yeah.
million times that I love. That just happens to be perfect because they actually are ghosts that look like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
But
Exactly.
like they make it look like it's all part of like the same line when they've made like holographic glow in the dark
Yeah,
ones,
because
which
the
I don't
color
like.
was almost the same. Yeah,
They're
that
the
makes sense.
same,
I get it.
yeah.
That's where it gets confusing.
But they've made, but some people, and I get nitpicky, they're like, oh yeah, like they're all Force ghosts like Star Wars pops. I'm like, well, no, they're not, because like Kylo Ren's never been a Force ghost on screen
Yeah.
or any, like, so he has a holograph one, but like they just made that like a Star Wars like special glow in the dark signature.
Yeah.
Not to go on a
Because it's
tangent,
actually,
but
it is only Star Wars, right? They don't, there's no other line that comes in that
no,
color like
there
as,
isn't. It's
and that
only
glow is
Star
better
Wars.
than the normal glow.
The glow
The
is
glows
sick.
on those are always better,
Yeah.
which is a cool thing that Star Wars does that then, because those look awesome. Like, I mean, I just recently got the Mando one
The
that we were
Mando
just
one,
talking about
yeah.
actually, and like, yeah, the glows on those are sick. But
So
yeah,
that's
I
another
just thought that
thing
was
that they just
crazy
make
that
for
those things
Star
are so
Wars.
expensive.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
it is crazy.
it's a bit, it's a big line, and it's big in the sense that like, yeah, they make a lot of different things, and it's not just like you said, it's not just Funko Pops. Funko in general definitely takes advantage of making their products a Star Wars version of their products, whether it's like you said, even keychains and
Oh, totally. They
like
make
all the
pens. Like I have
stuff,
a pen. Yeah, keychain
the
stickers.
t-shirts, yeah,
Yep,
everything.
t-shirts, sweatshirts, legitimately everything. And it's even funny talking about the size of the line though. That's what's also crazy to me about the Mandalorian. That line, they make more Mandalorian pops than they do prequel pops out of 3 movies. And that's 2 seasons of a television show that's only been out for a few years. It's kind of
It's because
crazy.
it's the newer one. Yeah, it's like
No, it
what they're
is.
doing now
But
with the
that
newer stuff.
shows what they do, and how we kind of talked about in our last episode, how we liked how the Peacemaker ones, they only did a few. Like, I do really wish I felt that way with Star Wars because I only got a movie every amount of years, where like Marvel now, Disney Plus in general has like killed me when it comes to collecting Funko Pops, because those are the things I like the most. And if you're getting a show every other few months, and now they're like making so many pops, like for example, like even with the Hawkeye show, like they made characters that they just didn't need to make. I know they want
Yeah,
representation for everyone, but it's kind of like I don't need them. And Mandalorian, I feel like, is the only Star Wars property that they really like. They made everything.
yeah, they really did, and I mean, I guess they capitalized on the popularity of it
Because the
that
amount
really
of,
like,
I mean, obviously the amount, and I'm guilty of it, but the amount of Grogu Baby Yoda pops they've made is insane.
that was one. Yeah, that was a little too. And even like I remember grabbing a couple, and then I was like, do I want to get all of these? And I was like, there's too many.
Yeah.
I don't need. And then it's if you're an inbox collector, the box is sideways, so now like you got to display it differently. So I was like, yeah, I'll get a couple, but I don't need every single one. And they keep coming out with more, so it's like,
Yeah,
you
I
really
know.
got to collect them all. But uh, yeah, I mean, is there anything else you want to touch on
With that, I mean, just
the
even
line
like
in general?
just the line in general, I mean, we kind of covered it mostly. I mean, it's a really unique line, and there's really something there for everyone. And it's kind of cool to see, for those of you who care about value. I know we're not the biggest value guys, but like a lot of Star Wars pops fluctuate a lot based off of what's now happening
Yeah,
in culture. Like, for example, like the Obi-Wan Kenobi trailer that just dropped, it has the Inquisitors in it that were characters that were in Star Wars Rebels. So now people are like freaking out about getting these pops, which I find funny because I'm an OG fan. I legitimately got those for $8.99, and now people are
hmm
like need to get them, which it's just interesting to see because it doesn't happen that much in Star Wars, in my opinion, as it does in the Marvels of the world. So it's interesting to
yeah,
see. It's been happening of late, even with like the Obi-Wan, because this I think also goes back to there's not as many prequel stuff. So even like the Obi-Wan Kenobi ones where Ewan McGregor, there's a few pops. People now are freaking out that they need to get that. It's just
Yeah.
I find it funny.
I think it's more a Disney Plus thing. Like it's because you said Marvel, but if you think
Yep.
about it, it kind of started with the Disney Plus like
No, yeah.
craze of shows, and then any movie that came out after that as well,
Yep.
even though it's not on Disney Plus necessarily. That's when this whole like thing has happened, and it's happening now with Star Wars. Like we know it's going to happen with Obi-Wan stuff. You know it's going to happen. It happened with Boba Fett stuff. It's going to happen with Ahsoka stuff.
No, you're
Like
totally true.
yeah. Because look, we saw Cad Bane, and look at how many people went crazy.
People are
for
freaking
Cad
out
Bane.
over it. Yep.
So like it's gonna happen again with Obi-Wan. It's gonna happen with Ahsoka. It's gonna happen.
It is.
With
Look,
another
so
Mandalorian
for
season
all
if
of
we get
you
something else.
listeners out there, like who that is important to you, the Star Wars Rebels pops are pops you're gonna want to get if you want, because I can guarantee you all those characters are gonna make their debut in the Ahsoka show. So Ezra, Sabine, we're getting and Hera, but we're getting also now, like I said, all those Inquisitors are coming in Obi-Wan Kenobi. So all those pops, all those characters have never been in live action. Now's the time. I don't want to spoil the show, but one of the pops of the main characters, he won't be making a debut in probably any live action unless there's flashbacks. You can get why if you understand what I'm saying. So that character, who knows if his value will change, but I doubt they're ever going to make another pop of him. So it's interesting that there'll be one.
Yeah.
So
that is well, you heard it here first.
You heard it here.
That's something you want, and you want to get something before it's popular. Go ahead and grab it now. It might be too hard to get it later. But that's going to be our episode. It was a great, packed episode. Star Wars. This is one of those big lines and topics that I'm sure we will definitely revisit eventually. We obviously have May 4th coming around, celebration, stuff like that. So I'm sure we'll talk about it again. But we wanted to kind of just touch on it now because we haven't. And it is a big line that I know, we're fans of. Charlie's a really super fan of. So I wanted to just kind of let you guys know. So that is going to be our episode around Star Wars. Thank you guys so much for listening and watching. If you guys are watching here on YouTube, like we always say, make sure you do subscribe down below so you can continue to follow up with all of our content that we'll be putting out. We are now going to be doing 2 episodes a week. If you notice, this is our 2nd episode. We're splitting up the news stuff and our main topics going forward. So definitely make sure to check back on both episodes. If you're listening on the podcast, you can listen to the episode like you normally do. And that'll be it for us for this episode. So that's all from me. Thank you guys so much. And until next time, have a good one.
Yeah. May the force be with you.